What is up everybody, it is me DevilNeverCry, and in this video I want to go over some recent Resident Evil 3 Remake news. As always, make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with all of my content. But on the topic of today's video, PlayStation Magazine recently put out an interview where we got a whole host of info on the game that is literally just around the corner. It's going to be out in a couple months and I can't wait. But there's some potentially controversial things in here that I kind of wanted to cover and give my opinion on. So the first topic I want to kind of mention, or the first thing we come to find, Mercenary mode is not going to be returning. Mercenaries mode, I believe, was actually introduced in Resident Evil 3, and it's been a staple of the series ever since. You know, it's been in 4, 5, and 6. Not sure about 7, because I didn't play 7, but I can understand when people are upset about this. You know, it's a mini game. It adds a lot of replay value to the game. I could understand maybe that, you know, Project Resistance, as it's called, is maybe supposed to be a substitute for it, but it's obviously not the same. You know, I didn't really play the original game, so I don't really have much of a stake in this mode, but it is sad to hear that it's not going to be returning. Next up is the fact that Carlos will be playable. People have been dubbing him Thick Carlos, or the replacement for Resident Evil 5 Chris, because he's a beefcake now, and it's cool to see that he's going to be playable in this. Next up is the fact that there's not going to be any of the action choice mechanic that was in the original game. So at certain points in Resident Evil 3, you'd essentially be hit with a choice, time will be ticking down, and I believe you'd have to make your choice, and the game would essentially be altered depending on what choice you make, i.e. one of the early game choices is to either fight Nemesis or to run away into the police department, and obviously the game plays out differently based on what you do. That's not going to be returning. I'd imagine they're probably going to make it more organic in a sense, instead of it just being like a binary choice, but that remains to be seen. On the topic of Nemesis though, apparently they're going to be using an improved version of MR.X's AI from Resident Evil 2 Remake, so they're kind of, I'd imagine, be building upon that, which is understandable. You know, MR.X, you know, wherever he goes he brings doom with him, and no doubt Nemesis will be the same, despite the fact that obviously Nemesis is a much larger threat. On the topic of being a threat though, sound is going to be very important in Raccoon City, and you'll supposedly have to rely on it to anticipate danger. That is interesting. I mean, for those of you that have played Resident Evil 2 Remake, you know that sound does play a big part of it when it comes to Mr.X. X will give it to you if you're not careful, and hearing those thudding footsteps that he has, they're not really footsteps, they're basically a drum beat to your death, and the closer they get the more likely you are to die, and it was always very unsettling when you'd hear him and then all of a sudden the footsteps stop, because you know that he's probably going to end up punching his way through a wall or through a mirror. So to see that they're building upon that is going to be very interesting. Obviously it's going to be throughout the entirety of Raccoon City, not just the police department, so I'd imagine that they're going to have all sorts of sounds going on in terms of, you know, letting you know that danger's around the corner. We have confirmation that we'll be able to, you know, visit the streets of Raccoon City. We're going to be able to go into all sorts of shops, the petrol stations, you know, the Raccoon City press office, things like that, and the hospital as well, which is cool to hear. It's essentially them, you know, building upon what there was in Resident Evil 2 Remake, which makes sense considering that RE2 Remake and this game were actually co-developed at the same time, which again is why its release is essentially just around the corner. Getting back to the topic of Nemesis though, one of the things that I was actually quite shocked to learn is the fact that they apparently created and built Nemesis in real life so that they could scan him in via photogrammetry. For those of you who don't know, the Resident Evil, well, not the Resident Evil engine, sorry, the Reach engine, or the RE engine as it's dubbed, is photorealistic, very photorealistic, and part of that is the fact that they actually scan items in. This was done with Resident Evil 2 Remake, this was done with DevilNeverCry. I mean, you know, all the jackets that the three protagonists wore, they were actually created, physically built in real life and then scanned in, which is why things look absolutely amazing. So to hear that they built an actual monster just so that they could scan him in is absolutely wild. No doubt that monster they built is probably just sitting in an office somewhere, probably giving people absolute nightmares and heart attacks whenever people see it for the first time or just accidentally walk into it. And the last thing that I kind of want to cover in this video is the fact that there's not going to be multiple endings, which is interesting. Again, something that's always been a staple of the Resident Evil series is the fact that the choices you make alter the game and the story and how it plays out, and essentially how the game ends. So to hear that they're doing away with that, which means there's only going to be one sort of canonical route throughout the entirety of the game, is interesting to see. I don't know how the community is going to take that, considering I'd imagine everybody who originally played it has their own sort of headcanon as to how the game plays out and how it ends. But yeah, that remains to be seen. That's not everything that was included in this interview, by the way, but it's all I kind of wanted to cover. I will leave a link down in the description below to the interview so you guys can sort of check it out in your own time. As always though, let me know down in the comments below what you guys think about all these new details. Are you annoyed with the fact that there's not going to be a Mercenaries mode, or are you alright with the fact that we've got Project Resistance instead? Are you annoyed at the fact that there's not going to be multiple endings, you know? Let me know down in the comments below. With all of that said and done though, people, it has been me, DevilNeverCry. I would like to thank all of you for watching, and as always, I'll see you all next time.